जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजना यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी यमुना तीरवनचारी हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय रामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपिनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय मायापुर नवदीप धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय जमुना माई की जय नर्मदा माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद पुस्तक वितरण की जय धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय All glories to the simple devotees. Hare Krishna, glories to the simple devotees. Hare Krishna, glories to the simple devotees. Hare Krishna, glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to His Divine Grace. Shri Prabhupada, Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Chakrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadhvaitam Savadutam Parijanasetam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sakarnita Shri Shakhanvitam Chanamam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhashyati Deshatarani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Makam Karati Vachala Mangalam Gayati Krimit Kripatamam Deshi Vridhira Paramanandamadavam Shri Chaitaneshwaram. So welcome devotees to yet another session of the online reading of the book from the book Mothers and Masters, written by His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj, published by Bhakti Vikas Trust, dedicated to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We're continuing to read from the section 1, Women Masters or Mothers. And in that, the topic today, we are going to continue from page number 68 of the book. If you're having the third edition, this is the revised and third edition of the book. So in that, we are reading from page number 68. If you are unable to see from your mobile properly, because it is a small font, you can directly go through the book. We are going to continue in that book only, same book which you have if you are having. If you don't have, please, for Krishna's sake, you please order the book. So here is the link of the book. If you have it, you can order it. If you don't have it, if you have it, you can order it for somebody else. If you don't have it, at least you can order for yourself. So this is the link. So we're going to continue to read. I hope everybody is able to hear. I think I'm audible to everybody. Yes, thank you. Yes. Am I audible? Yes, Hare Krishna. Okay. Okay. Continuing to read. Page number 68. Nasty effects of feminism within ISKCON. A lady devotee from India informed me some years ago my godbrother S. Dasa took a break from his secular job here in India to serve in a temple in America at the behest of the local GBC there. In the following 3 years, he got to travel to various centers in the US. What he found most disturbing in most of the congregations he visited was the mood of bizandry or hatred towards men among the women. He wondered what sort of sentiments such women harbored toward their own gurus and toward Srila Prabhupada. He eventually cut short his assignment and retreated to India. So it seems that man-hating women presume that they are hated by men and respond accordingly. It's a vicious cycle. The unabashed promotion of feminism continues as vigorously within ISKCON as in the secular world. In Women in Krishna Consciousness in Prabhupada's times, an example is cited that in the early days of ISKCON, men and women would together circumambulate Tulsi Devi, but that later on the practice was stopped by certain hardcore men. As a result of this published revelation, many ISKCON centers in the West reintroduced that men and women circumambulate Tulsi Devi together. My personal experience of this change has not been good. A few years ago, in an ISKCON center in Europe, while circumambulating Tulsi Devi, I noticed that a female devotee was just to my left. So I moved to my right, only to almost bump into another woman who was next to me on that side. I then stopped circumambulating and stood at a distance. The system of men and women circumambulating Tulsi Devi together has now been stopped in the temple, presumably because the devotees there can understand that it is improper. At a festival in another European country, while standing in the crowded temple room, I was physically shoved off the way by a woman devotee who seemed in a hurry to go somewhere. And when I was invited to go onto the altar to bathe the deities, I saw that there were only women in the altar area, 5 women and the deities, all in a crammed space, which hardly one more person could squeeze into. I cannot go in there. I protested to the male devotee who had invited me. But this is this is modern ISKCON. He laughingly replied, "Well, forget it, I'm not going." I don't want to sound winning, but these are examples of attitudes and behavior that are unconducive to creating an ethos suitable for the spiritual progress of anyone, whether designated as male or female. Feminist proselytizers are determined to work their mischief also within India. A Bengali devotee told me that although the route of the Navadip Dham Parikrama, many villagers, both Hindu and Muslim, were visibly aghast to behold ISKCON Bengali women dancing vigorously in public. Those enthusiastically dancing women could not have dreamed of doing so had they never associated with their Western god sisters. Worse still, certain Western devotees come to the dhams in India and there preach denigration of Stri Dharma to local women. Why are you so submissive? Why are you submissive to your husband? More than one Indian Vaishnava had told me that after many years of peaceful married life, he one day returned home and suddenly encountered his wife arguing and fighting with him. Her attitude had completely changed upon being told that her husband has been exploiting her. So she should stop serving him obediently and should instead stand up for her rights. Many Indian women who join ISKCON, especially those from village backgrounds, become influenced toward Western thinking. When they lived in their village, they were trained in traditional ways, but after coming to ISKCON, they lose their culture by observing the behavior of the Western women, whom they naively presume to be superior. An impression that many Westerners also seem to hold, even though Western devotees should learn how to behave from cultured Indian devotees, not degrade the Indians by introducing their Malicha ways. Misunderstanding Srila Prabhupada's adjustments. It appears that many devotees have misunderstood some of Srila Prabhupada's early adjustments to have been the standard to be followed for all future time. For instance, his allowing women to live in a temple ashrams. On this point, Srila Prabhupada commented, "My god brothers criticize me that I have allowed women to live in our temples. This is not done in India. Only brahmacharis can live, but I have become successful because I have made this adjustment." Sometimes jealous people criticize the Krishna consciousness movement because it engages equally both boys and girls in distributing love of Godhead. Not knowing that boys and girls in countries like Europe and America mix very freely, these fools and rascals criticize the boys and girls in Krishna consciousness for intermingling. But these rascals should consider that one cannot suddenly change a community's social customs. However, since both the boys and girls are being trained to become preachers, those girls are not ordinary girls, but are as good as their brothers who are preaching Krishna consciousness. Therefore, to engage both boys and girls in fully Krishna conscious, fully transcendental activities is a policy intended to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. These jealous fools who criticize the intermingling of boys and girls will simply have to be satisfied with their own foolishness because they cannot think of how to spread Krishna consciousness by adopting ways and means that are favorable for this purpose. This passage is often quoted by ISKCON feminists to substantiate their claim that the adjustments made by Srila Prabhupada for his Western preaching should be perpetuated forever, thereby overriding the norms of countless generations of Vaishnava culture. However, there is overwhelming evidence that Srila Prabhupada wanted to replace what he called the nasty Western culture. Hence, the words, "one cannot suddenly change a community's social custom," indicate that even though Srila Prabhupada certainly wanted to change social customs in the West, he realized the impracticality of trying to suddenly and completely change everyone. Because in your country there is no distinction between boys and girls or man and woman, they can freely mix without any restriction. I do not give too much stricture on this point, because by such stricture they might be annoyed and whatever Krishna consciousness they are trying to develop might have been checked. In our society, the girls and boys mix, intermingle together, and this is practically impossible to stop because you Western people are accustomed to the habit. Sometimes my god brothers criticize me for intermingling of boys and girls, but there is no way out of it. You girls and boys will mix. Even if I say not to, they cannot avoid it. They sit separately in the temple and then outside mix again. So this was not possible from the beginning. Sometimes in India, I am criticized that I keep women and men in the same temple. In India, that is not allowed. No woman can live at night. They can come and go, but I defend myself that this is the system of the country. The women and men, they intermingle. How can I check it? Then the women, shall I not give them any chance of chanting Hare Krishna? No, I shall give this chance to women even at the risk of illicit sex. Within traditional Indian culture, many measures for separating the sexes were more stringent than can hardly be imagined today. An example is that commonly in public events, arrangements would be made so that men and women would not even see one another. Elderly people in India might remember the use of bamboo screen for situations in which unrelated men and women would need to communicate. For instance, an Ayurvedic doctor, in those days only males were doctors, would examine a lady's pulse from behind a screen via a cotton thread tied around her wrist. He would not see the woman. Similarly, through such a screen, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave Harinam Diksha to one of his young female disciples. This is described in Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, Part 2, Chapter 24. Regarding women, this chapter has many salient points about traditional gender roles. So devotees are requested to kindly refer to this chapter given in the footnote. Maharaj has given. This is Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, Part 2, Chapter 24, regarding women. Traditional gender roles. Such apparently extreme measures were the external manifestation of a culture wherein much precaution was taken to prevent even impure thoughts, or to speak of improper interactions. Still, although such norms had been in practice for thousands of years, it is probably impractical to try to quickly return to them, because most people today are clueless as to what constitutes proper behavior. In fact, take right to be wrong and wrong to be right. Recognizing that it was difficult for his Western and especially his female disciples to accept much of the Vedic culture, Srila Prabhupada did not force them to adopt traditional practices of gender separation. Yet he let them know that the separation of man and woman is desirable. The very same principle he had outlined even before coming to America. The ladies of Dwarka did not mix with the crowd on the street, and thus their respectability was perfectly observed. There was no artificial equality with the man. Female respectability is preserved more elegantly by keeping the woman separate from the man. The sexes should not mix unrestrictedly. Srila Prabhupada was quite aware of the mindset of his Western female disciples and often encouraged them to serve Krishna in ways that were commensurate with their abilities and outlook. Doing so helped to kickstart the Krishna consciousness movement in the West. Yamuna Devi Dasi recalled, As a strong and independent young woman, I met Srila Prabhupada in 1966 and took initiation in 1967. Had Srila Prabhupada demanded conformity to orthodox roles for women as a condition of surrender, I, along with many of my god sisters, would probably not have joined ISKCON. That he did not is testament to his spiritual vision. He lovingly encouraged and engaged us in the service of Sankirtan movement, and he consistently revealed himself to be Pandita Samadarshinaha, equal to all. Apart from Yamuna Devi Dasi, many other female devotees have made outstanding contributions to Srila Prabhupada's mission. For instance, Vishakha Devi Dasi is probably the most prolific photographer in the history of ISKCON. She and her husband, Yaduvara Prabhu, Yaduvara Das, were photographers even before meeting Srila Prabhupada, who fully encouraged them in their art, and together they have spent a lifetime in his divine service. Srila Prabhupada wanted to impart Vedic tradition, but he was also practical and therefore made concessions for his Western sons and daughters. In engaging female devotees in ways unprecedented in Vedic culture, he demonstrated extraordinary broad-mindedness. For example, he permitted women to perform deity worship in public temples, which is disallowed in India, and to live, albeit separately, in the same ashrams as men. He made these cultural adjustments to facilitate the establishment of Krishna consciousness in the West. This was Srila Prabhupada's expertise and special mercy to engage all fallen souls in Krishna's service, and even those from a background of very little real culture of any kind. He was unswavering in upholding absolute truths and principles, yet flexible when it came to inspiring and motivating individuals. His endeavor was to encourage people to chant the holy names and to engage in devotional service at whatever standard and in whatever way they could, with the aim of steadily elevating them. As he himself explained, it is the concern of the Acharya to show mercy to the fallen souls. In this connection, Desha, Kala, Patra, the place, the time, and the object should be taken into consideration. Since the European and American boys and girls in our Krishna consciousness movement preach together, less intelligent men criticize that they are mingling without restriction. In Europe and America, boys and girls mingle unrestrictedly and have equal rights. Therefore, it is not possible to completely separate the men from the women. However, we are thoroughly instructing both men and women how to preach, and actually they are preaching wonderfully. Of course, we very strictly prohibit illicit sex. Boys and girls who are not married are not allowed to sleep together or live together, and there are separate arrangements for boys and girls in every temple. Grihasthas live outside the temple, and for in the temple, we do not allow even husband and wife to live together. The results of this are wonderful. Both men and women are preaching the gospel of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Krishna with redoubled strength. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to deliver one and all. Therefore, it is a principle that a preacher must strictly follow the rules and regulations laid down in the Shastras, yet at the same time devise a means by which the preaching work to reclaim the fallen may go on with full force. Hence, in the beginning days of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada was very tolerant, but he then gradually revealed to his followers how they could improve in their service and behavior. He did what every teacher must do. First, start with the basics and only gradually introduce more developed concepts. Although he had a definite outlook on Stri Dharma, he did not attempt to forcibly impose it, due to his observation that Westerners were simply not ready for it. Still, along with introducing pragmatic adjustments, Srila Prabhupada often spoke about Vedic culture and the necessity for establishing it, which includes traditional gender roles within the Varnashrama system. While being lenient and seeing the spirit soul in everyone, he never, as some would have us believe, overrode the Vedic social teachings. Yes, this is important. Within ISKCON, it has been propagated and is now widely accepted as fact that some overly zealous men undermined the initial idyllic equality and casual mixing of the sexes. But this narrative, observe this word, narrative, obscures the fact that on principle, Srila Prabhupada approved the introduction of restrictions that reshape the gender equation, as evidenced not only by his numerous philosophical instructions, but also by his ordering without inducement from others at least one very significant change. Now there should be one rule, that unless they are husband and wife, man and woman should not worship deities together. Very, very important. Had this command been fully instituted, several devotees would have been saved from disastrous fall downs, and ISKCON itself would have been spared much shame. Quite early in the history of ISKCON, along with providing adjustments to accommodate his female disciples, Srila Prabhupada specified that he wanted them to perform distinctively feminine duties. This pertained especially to the farm communities, which were meant to demonstrate the ideal of the Krishna conscious life. The first thing is that whether the girls and women who live there are agreeable to work as I have suggested, namely, 1, to take care of children, both from health and education point of view; 2, to keep the whole temple, kitchen, etc. very clean; 3, cooking; 4, churning butter. A woman's real business is to look after household affairs, keep everything neat and clean, and if there is sufficient milk supply available, she should always be engaged in churning butter, making yogurt, curd, so many nice varieties simply from milk. The woman should be cleaning, sewing, like that. Yet also for his female disciples who served in city temples, Srila Prabhupada assigned duties specific to their constitution and nature. All the wives of our students should be especially trained up for deity worship and cooking. And when possible, they should go out on Sankirtan party with their husbands and others. Notably, with their husbands. Even after having experienced public strictures for his anti-feminist stance, up until the last days of his manifest presence, Srila Prabhupada continued to iterate female duties for females. Girls should be taught how to sweep, how to stitch, clean, cook, to be faithful to the husband, obedient to the husband. Clearly, Srila Prabhupada wanted his Western lady disciples to overcome their cultural conditioning and accept the role of a Vedic wife. He warned that by not doing so, their spiritual progress would be obstructed. In 1976, he instructed a Western lady devotee who previously had been a movie actress. Oh, Krishna. As a faithful wife, your duty is to follow your husband. That is your duty. Otherwise, you will be hampered in your advancement in Krishna consciousness. Your husband and wife, and you have to follow the instructions of your spiritual master wherever you live. Simply, one has to be in full Krishna consciousness. Study the philosophy and try to distribute this philosophy. Where is the problem? I don't see the problem. Your duty is to keep peacefully with your husband, and his duty is to follow strictly the principles given to him by his spiritual master. You have got to live, so live cooperatively. A wife's duty is to remain faithful to her husband, and if the husband is a pure devotee, then both of them will be happy. What is the problem? Referring to an Indian couple. You see, they are living happily, husband and wife. The culture is so nice amongst Indians that in any condition, the husband and wife live very peacefully. The lady devotee protested, I have not been brought up in that culture, to which Srila Prabhupada responded, if something is good, you should accept. I know in your Western countries, the ideas are different, but we have to pick up the best. In Western culture, the wife should remain faithful to husband. If the husband is bad, then that is another thing. Your husband is not mad, he's bad. Mad. He's a devotee. So what is wrong there? Don't disturb your mind. Follow what I have laid down and chant Hare Krishna. Follow the regulative principles and read the books. Thus, Srila Prabhupada made various concessions that were necessary for establishing Krishna consciousness in the West. Only gradually did he introduce introduce gender specific roles and separation of the sexes, basic Varnashram practices that have always been required within Vaishnava society for protecting devotees from spiritual downfall. A relevant analogy. Whereas normal circumstances call for careful driving at moderate speeds, in case of emergency, an ambulance might be driven extremely fast so as to reach the hospital as quickly as possible, even though such speeding drastically increases the risk of injury and death. Similarly, it would be dangerous to consider Srila Prabhupada's early innovations to be the standard for Vaishnavism for all time. By taking various risks, such as allowing the mixing of males and females, Srila Prabhupada was able to introduce Krishna consciousness within a culture that was devoid of the safeguards afforded by Varnashrama Dharma. It was indeed a risk, for there certainly was danger, and factually, many of his disciples did succumb to Maya, for which reason Srila Prabhupada wanted to establish Varnashrama Dharma for the benefit of not only his followers but also the world. Another analogy. Suppose Srila Prabhupada were leading a kirtan and steadily increasing the tempo, yet the accompanying devotees failed to notice and continued to play instruments at a slower speed. And when informed that they should have increased the pace to keep in sync with Srila Prabhupada, they protest. We are playing in a way that Srila Prabhupada has already approved. Similarly, although Srila Prabhupada retained the basic aim for beginning Krishna consciousness to the world, he gradually made changes in his approach. Changes that many of his disciples seem to have either missed or been unable to adjust to. As Yamuna Devi Dasi wrote, I tried to become more conscious of the behavior and etiquette some leaders in ISKCON were expecting of women, even though this was the antithesis of my prior experience and training. It is arguable that the same kind of concessions that Srila Prabhupada made are still applicable, for the influence of feminism in the West is even more pervasive than previously. A counter argument is that Srila Prabhupada's female disciples should have by now understood his mission and been able to groom themselves into more traditional roles, and should also be competent to refute objections by the public in regard to ISKCON women's non-feministic behavior. So I would like to request some of the devotees also to participate in the reading. I think Asita Prabhu is inactive, it's said here. Asita Prabhu, are you there or not there? Hare Krishna. Oh, this is waste of time. Oh, I'm sorry. Hare Krishna, Asita Prabhu, are you there?
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu, I'm here.
What is this? 2 times it is coming up and down.
Am I audible?
Yeah, but up also, maybe previously you did, that's why. 1 second, I will revoke and then I will give access. 1 second. I don't know something. Okay, so now you can continue, Prabhuji. I've given you access.
Tweaking history by blaming the men.
No. You start. Now
Okay.
you start. Yes.
Okay. Tweaking history by blaming the men. Followers of Srila Prabhupada should know that whatever adjustments he made due to Desh Kal Patra, place, Western world, time, 1960s, and persons, hippies, should eventually be replaced by the genuinely human cultural standards that he tirelessly advocated. Those of his female followers who feel that they were mistreated might consider that much of their suffering arose from their not having kept up with the tempo. That is, by refusing to acknowledge that the ongoing changes in gender roles originated with and were desired by Srila Prabhupada himself, who derived them from the very Shastra, and tradition that he had come to establish. They are as if stuck in a conception of how Krishna consciousness should be practiced, based on their cherished personal interactions with Srila Prabhupada during an early phase of his preaching mission, and apparently do not want to see the broader picture of Srila Prabhupada's later instructions, such as you leaders see that the Krishna conscious standards in regard to initiation, cleanliness, dress, and activities of the devotees, the restriction of association between men and women, all be strictly followed. Devotional service cannot be done whimsically. In order to avoid blaming Srila Prabhupada, they have instead wholly indicted those men who often rather crassly imposed gender demarcation, yet did so under the order of Srila Prabhupada. For instance, Yamuna Devi Dasi commented, our society was dramatically growing and changing. Srila Prabhupada was creating so many sannyasis, and the GBC was in place. It was these men who attempted to create a society wide template on the position and treatment of women. Like their secular counterparts, the suffragettes have vigorously opposed those who have protested their feministic rewrite of history, in this case, that of ISKCON. Similarly, to exonerate Srila Prabhupada from his centrality in ISKCON's changed gender equation, the suffragettes have had to recast him as being largely divorced from tradition and as having little empathy for the suffering of women. The following further example of history tweaking claims that Srila Prabhupada was aware of the devaluation of women, yet allowed it due to his indulging of sannyasis. The situation began to change in the mid 1970s. By this time, several male devotees had been initiated as sannyasis. They worked closely with Srila Prabhupada, particularly on various projects in India where they were exposed to very different cultural circumstances to those operating in the West. Looking back to this time, older devotees now see this situation as causal in the devaluation of women within the movement. With a desire to protect their own ashrama and their individual spiritual advancement, they saw the involvement of women as a problem. Prabhupada was certainly aware of some of the things which took place in this period. However, most devotees, in evaluating the changes in relation to Prabhupada's original openness and equal treatment of women, believe that he allowed such things to happen to allay the fears of his newly celibate male population and perhaps to help them with the difficulties that the renunciant lifestyle inevitably engendered. But if we analyze according to Shastra rather than by mundane social and psychological theories, then much of the suffering that female devotees have accused men of perpetrating can better be attributed to those females' misconceived desires for equal rights, opportunities, and positions. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2.62-63, such desire leads to frustration, anger, and bewilderment. So it is wiser to be happy by remembering Srila Prabhupada's advice. Everything will be satisfied. Just like a woman, Krishna conscious, they are working. They don't want equal rights with the men. It is due to Krishna consciousness. They are cleansing the temple, they are cooking very nicely, they are satisfied. They never said that I have to go to Japan to preach for preaching like Prabhupada. They never say this is artificial. Krishna consciousness means work in his constitutional position. The women, men, when they remain in their constitutional position, there will be no artificial. By solely blaming men within ISKCON, the suffragettes have created an artificial gender divide that parallels that made by feminists in secular society. If they were more honest, they would admit that the real problem is with certain of Srila Prabhupada's teachings, which at heart they do not agree with and do not want to accept. A case study Yamuna Devi Dasi. Yamuna Devi Dasi was maybe the best known, highest regarded, and most loved among Srila Prabhupada's female disciples. She became famous for her singing, cooking, deity worship, missionary work, deep sense of dedication to Srila Prabhupada, and her many saintly qualities. According to her own account, Srila Prabhupada so much appreciated her abilities that he once considered inducting her as a half member of the GBC. He told her, I was planning that you and Govinda Dasi would be as one governing board member half. She replied, I don't think this would be very successful because I have a female body and it simply wouldn't work. And Srila Prabhupada agreed. Her extensive biography reveals the struggles that she, like many of her god sisters, underwent during the first clumsy, if not harsh, attempts to institute within ISKCON some semblance of traditional gender roles. Being a self professedly strong and independent young woman, as quoted above, Yamuna derived many bittersweet lessons amid the conservative culture of India. One occurred in January 1971 during the Ardha Kumbh Mela in Allahabad. As had always been her habit, she sat close to Srila Prabhupada during his morning lectures. Throughout my early years of Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada was so open and merciful to the ladies that we never felt the stricture of separation or division between us. So one morning, this sannyasi brusquely approached me and said, Yamuna, have you noticed where the other women are sitting? I replied, Yes, I have. They are seated in the back. They were seated in the back. He then said, You should be sitting back there with them, not in front by Srila Prabhupada. For the next 2 days, Yamuna sat in the back. Then Srila Prabhupada called her and asked why she, why she did not like to hear from him anymore. I immediately burst into tears because I had no words to express how much I was appreciating his discourses on the life of Ajamil. So I had, so I said, I love to hear from you more than ever, Srila Prabhupada. More than anything in the world, all I want is to hear from you. Prabhupada inquired, so why aren't you sitting where you usually sit? I said a sannyasi told me that it was the etiquette that I sit far in the back with the ladies. Prabhupada was quiet. Then he said, Yes, that is the etiquette. Significantly, although Srila Prabhupada initially engaged Yamuna Devi Dasi in active outgoing services after she left her husband and started a rural ashram, he wrote to her, Yes, you are right. Women are generally after sense gratification. That is the disease. Chant 24 hours a day and don't dress nicely to attract men. It is better that you don't make a large program. Remain a humble program. In Bhakti, there is no grotesque program. A humble person is better. We are doing all these grotesque programs to allure the masses. My Guru Maharaj used to say that no one hears from a person coming from a humble, simple life. You remain always very humble. Sita Devi, Mother Lakshmi, wife of Lord Ramchandra, went to live with Valmiki Muni in a cottage. Although she was a king's daughter and a king's wife, she preferred to live very humbly in the cottage of Valmiki Muni with two sons in the absence of Ramachandra. That should be the ideal example. Women, when not with husband, must live very, very humbly and simple life. Although in some ways Srila Prabhupada encouraged Yamuna in establishing her ashram, he had reservations about it, which, however, he did not directly express to her, but instead did so via a letter sent on the same day as the letter quoted above to the GBC man of the area wherein her ashram was situated. Regarding Yamuna and Deen Tarni, they want to live independently. That is the defect. A woman cannot live independent. According to the Vedic culture, a woman is always to be protected by a man. Privately, Srila Prabhupada commented, "What can I do? They want to be independent." As in several other cases, Srila Prabhupada dealt with Yamuna Devi Dasi according to her individual needs, and he recognized that some exceptional women can actually live as renunciants. Nevertheless, Srila Prabhupada's having made certain concessions does not undermine the fact that his overall social manifesto, meant to be implemented by his followers, is Varnashrama Dharma, with all that it entails, including the non independence of women.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Some other devotee can read, Prabhu.
Okay,
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Uh, Shiv Kumar ji, or I can tell Sripati Rajbharat. Hare Krishna. Uh, Sripati Rajbharat, you are there? You are not there. Oh, Krishna. It's not accepting. Okay, Shiv Kumar, you can read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. The transformation of women's roles. In Vedic culture, a woman may certainly be a master in the sense of overseeing household affairs or in being highly expert. As the queen of the home, it is she who largely creates and defines the domestic atmosphere, but can ruin it also. Nonetheless, her general social role is subtle and subdued, in accord with the feminine nature. She is to be subordinate to her master, her husband. Such a role is directly ordained and approved by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who states, "As chaste women bring a gentle husband under control by their service, the pure devotees, who are equal to everyone and completely attached to me in the core of the heart, bring me under their full control." George Eliot, a celebrated English writer who was actually a female but published her works under a male pseudonym, authored novels depicting the early period of the Industrial Revolution in England. Because capitalists needed workers for their factories, peasants' land was seized, thus compelling the peasants to move to the cities where they lived and worked in extremely unhealthy conditions. In one novel, Eliot portrays a man who is dying due to such adverse conditions and whose wife refers to him as "my master." In traditional English culture, a woman would consider her husband as master. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, this same understanding prevailed throughout most of the world, particularly in Vedic tradition, and as was encouraged by Srila Prabhupada, the foremost duty, dharma, of a woman is to be a housewife, and her natural propensity is household work. She is a wife, mother, grandmother, cook, cleaner, and guide to the children. In Sanskrit, she is called Griha Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune within the home, or Grihini, commonly rendered in Hindi as Gharwali, the female in the home.
Oh,
Such
Prabhuji,
was
you can read little bit louder. Little bit louder.
okay,
It
Prabhu.
is. Sorry, actually, some devotees are requesting to read loud. It is not audible. Actually, the
Okay,
thing
Prabhu.
is, when we record it, it'll be very less sound, still less sound than this. So better to read little bit loudly, then it will be good. Okay.
Okay, Prabhu.
Please read loudly. Yeah. Yes. Continue.
Such was the understanding the world over. In English, is the now almost defunct saying, a woman's place is in the home. The modern idea is that women should be out competing in the world, showing that they are as capable as men. However, women become attractive and powerful by their feminine qualities of shyness, service, and submissiveness, not only by imitating men. If the wife serves her husband well, and, and if he is responsible and not simply a loafer, he becomes inspired to work hard for her and provide everything she needs. That is actually a much better arrangement for her because without having to go out to work, she still gets what she wants. The astrological treatise Brihad Jataka, chapter 24, states that if a woman is destined to achieve worldly opulences such as wealth and fame, they will come to her through her husband. She does not have to do anything other than her own dharma. Admittedly, all of this is anathema to many modern women because they seek fulfillment through a career, and their very desire to do so is complexly linked with the historical transformation from an agrarian to an industrial economy and the almost complete shift in the values, norms, and usages that accompanied the age of technology. One effect was that women's work, which had been performed in the home, lost its economic value because much of the housework that they used to do could now be done by machines. Additionally, by utilizing artificial contraception, they were now bearing fewer children. As per Benedict Friedan, author of the highly influential The Feminine Mystic, 1963, the storybook, the storybook Perfect Housewives of her time were bored and listless and nervous and jittery. Of the women whom she interviewed, a surprising number were regularly treated by psychotherapists or often took tranquilizers, and several had attempted suicide. Many also were engaged in fact or in fantasy in extramarital affairs. To Friedan, their plight was obvious. They had uncommon gifts of intelligence and ability, nourished by at least the beginnings of higher education, and the life they were leading as suburban housewives denied them the full use of their gifts. Friedan reasoned that if women do not use their natural gifts in livelihoods commensurate with their abilities, the idleness of their domestic home life will be the cause of their perpetual misery. But there are serious problems with being a career woman. Later and more rigorous studies have shown that the extramarital affairs that Friedan presumed were caused by household boredom did not cease when women found their way into the workforce. Instead, the workplace offered further opportunity for illicit affairs. As reported by a recent study, some researchers have found that around one half of participants who had cheated on their partner and who sought therapy due to problems in their primary relationship had met their extradyadic partner, paramour, through their work. The same researchers also report that several studies had also found an association between adultery and higher education. Highly educated persons are more likely to report engaging in infidelity than less educated individuals. And as part of their own findings, they report there are no insignificant gender differences in the report of infidelity. In other words, the entrance of women en masse into the Western workforce secured equality at the cost of sexual restraint. Verily, Arjuna's concern, Bhagavad Gita 1.37 to 43, were for the degradation of women and consequent failure of society, is not some prudish anachronism. Rather, he speaks to our modern circumstances, for today's society is a full blown population of Varna Sankara. Hence, Srila Prabhupada's advice meant for today's world. There should be a thorough overhauling of the social system and society should revert to the Vedic principles, that is, the four Varnas and four Ashramas. Notwithstanding the illusory excitement of being a woman of the world, the highest boon awaits those devotee women who execute Stri Dharma in accord with the directions of Shastra. The woman who engages in the service of her husband, following strictly in the footsteps of the goddess of fortune, surely returns home back to Godhead with her devotee husband and lives very happily in the Vaikuntha planets. Lust, greed, and exploitation. As Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, there are three gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed, which intelligent persons should give up. But today's permissive society promotes all three of these vices, especially lust. Television, cinema, and the internet unabashedly and unrelentingly tout lust, anger, violence, and greed. The dangers of lust are described by Lord Krishna in the Gita. It covers one intelligence. It covers one's intelligence. Yet the peddling of lust is the main feature of today's liberal and progressive world. How can we propose that humankind will be very nice and peaceful and that everyone will be happy when lust, anger, and greed, lust being the root of them all, are promoted? Lust and greed cannot make anyone happy. On the contrary, they cause tremendous discontent because they can never be fulfilled. They are emblematic of happiness in the mode of passion, which is like nectar in the beginning but poison at the end. In today's ridiculously oversexed society, women are the main sufferers because they are more often and more seriously exploited. Lust is so strong that commonly even children, both boys and girls, are sexually exploited even by their closest relatives. Lust causes people to lose all sense of discrimination, all sense of right and wrong, as described in Bhagavad Gita 16.7, cited above. They then see others as mere bodies meant to satisfy their lust. They do not stop to reason or consider that body is actually their sister or daughter. But this is the mentality of pigs. The inordinate promotion of sexuality is the root cause of myriad problems within today's highly disturbed world. People are programmed to relentlessly indulge their sexual appetites. In modern civilization, sex life is the focal point for all activities. Wherever one turns his face, he sees sex life predominant. Women, in particular, are encouraged to be unchaste. What would formerly have been considered sluttish behavior is now heralded as virtue, as an assertion of women's independence and empowerment. Yet, these same women who freely mix with and entice men will later complain that they have been sexually exploited.
Okay.
Free mixing of the sexes must incite lust, which results in premarital sexual contact. Sex before marriage is devoid of commitment and responsibility. Marriage means a commitment to be responsible to one's family and to the whole community. But in animalistic society, a girl is picked up by a boy and together they enjoy sex. But what is she left with? She loses her virginity and her respectability, all for some fleeting titillation. And due to the habit of intermingling with assorted sexual partners before marriage, people continue to do so even after being married religiously. So, what is the point of marrying at all? Indeed, many people, especially in the West, simply do not bother to marry. They just live together until they feel like switching to someone else. All of this is very sinful and uncivilized, like cats and dogs, as Srila Prabhupada would say. In India, until only recently, free mixing between boys and girls, even in schools, was unthinkable, and up to about a century ago, the idea of sending girls to school could hardly be imagined, and was considered an abomination. Even now in India, men and women do not mix very freely. Innocent teenagers who are sent to westernized educational institutions are actually induced there to mix freely. Similarly, young people from small towns in South India who land IT jobs in Bangalore or in the call centers are induced to drink, smoke, have illicit sex, and thus become well degraded so as to fit into the lifestyle there. Of course, in the Western world, people do not need such special training. They are raised with sense gratification without even a hint that anything could be wrong with it. But an increasingly bewildered and clueless populace within India is fast becoming the norm there as well.
Okay, Prabhuji. I
Okay,
think we
Prabhuji.
can stop because it is going to be next topic and it might take. You can read. Yeah, it will take hardly 2 minutes.
Okay.
Sigmund Freud and his followers. Yeah, you can read it.
Sigmund Freud and his followers. A few years ago in Foyles, a famous bookshop in London, I came across a large room dedicated to a special exhibition of books by and about Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, whose speculations have deeply influenced the outlook of modern Western man. Therein, a placard declared that although all of his ideas have been shown to be inaccurate, he is still highly influential. Freud had some extremely strange ideas, such as the Oedipus complex, that every man is sexually attracted to his mother. However, Srila Prabhupada said that Freud was correct in as much as he recognized that the intrinsic feature within human society is sex, as per Srimad Bhagavatam 558. But Freud's emphasis on sexuality in analyzing mental states gave rise to a widely held assumption that all psychological problems are caused by repression of sexual desires. A contemporary proselyte, proselyter of his theory is a doctor in Tamil Nadu whose name, believe it or not, is Dr. Kamaraj. He appears on television every Saturday morning and preaches that daily sex with one's wife is the only way to keep away both the doctor and the lawyer. Otherwise, a man will visit prostitutes and later need to be treated by a doctor, and the wife will not be carnally satisfied, so will want a divorce. However, until only recently throughout the world, marriage was understood to be an irrevocable religious commitment till death do us part, whereby man and woman unite in the eyes of God. Sex is allowed only within marriage and dovetailed for procreation. Sex is undeniably important within marriage, but marriage is not meant to be centered solely on sex. Without a religious commitment, there is no difference between the sexual behavior of humans and that of animals. There is no marriage among dogs and cats, only lust.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Oh, such a heat topic. Huh? Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. We'll continue to read from tomorrow, unless and until if somebody has any doubts or anything to ask. Doubts means, I mean to say, if there is somebody something is need to be asked, then they can ask. Otherwise, we'll stop here. Prabhuji, everybody, everyone reading has their name posted, but your name is not. May I know your name, please? We are from Bhakti Vikas Trust, Mataji. My name is Krishna Keshav Das. Hare Krishna. So, anything else need to be asked? No. Okay. Okay, Mataji's, Prabhuji's. So thank you very much for attending the sessions. Hope to see you tomorrow. So please continue to come and attend these classes. These are very, very important. These sessions, these are very, very important. We might think that we want to read it separately. No problem. No problem. But many a times we see that we may not be able to read properly, but in association with devotees in group, it becomes easier, and so many things reveal to us. So yeah, we can read ourselves also, but when such program is organized where we can read, then that facility should be, what I can say, that opportunity should be taken care very nicely. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. We will stop here. So we will continue to read from page number 93. The topic: sex, dissatisfaction, and family decline. From here, topics are very heavy and very sensitive and very touchy subjects. So please read again and again those subjects. The subjects which discussed, what I can say, lust, greed, exploitation, previous transformation of women's roles. Oh, this is, and Yamuna Devi Dasis. These are all very subtle points, one by one. It's very difficult to again anybody to verbatimly repeat them. So again and again by reading only, these topics will be inculcated, will drilled in our mind. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhibhyev vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Dante nidhayatyanakam padayor nipatya. Krutva chaka kushatam etadham bhavimi sadava sakalam vihai durat. Chaitanya Chandra Charane Kurtanuragat. Hare Krishna.